Well, hello, it's been a while since we've done a recipe, hasn't it? And what better way to start than with one of my most favorite bites of food of all time. A luscious, juicy, perfectly cooked, medium rare steak with a nice sauce is great. But what about crispy, hot, salty French fries? You know, it's like the perfect combination, and it is steak and frites.
To begin, we'll be prepping our fries for the first fry, then we'll cook our steak all the way through. While that rests, I'll showcase two sauce options. One that I think is better, and one that is easier. Then we'll come back for our final fry and plate up.
There are two ways to make frites in today's modern society. You make them yourself, which obviously there's so much honor in that. You could tell people you made them from scratch. You have all the control on the final product. So we're gonna make them first, and then I'll show you another version that's even easier, but let's start with this because this is way cooler. Russet potatoes. You're gonna take each of them and you're going to peel them completely. So I'm peeling these over parchment paper also. You don't have to do this, but anything that requires peeling and a ton of peels, instead of doing it all in your sink and throwing it down the garbage disposal, you could very easily do it over parchment paper, and you're clean instantly. Instant clean board. And then you're gonna cut your potato into fries. Simple as that. If you don't have one of those, I totally get it. Guess what? You can just do it with a knife. First, I'm gonna flatten this out, right? I'll move that guy over. You're gonna start with about 1/4 of an inch cut into 1/4 of an inch board, or plank, if you will. And you're gonna take each of these planks and you're gonna do the exact same length cut, 1/4 of an inch, the long way. And what you end up with is batons, also called French fries. That's it. Cut them as thick or as thin as you want. I would recommend not going any thicker than about 1/4 of an inch around. We have 3.5 quarts of water in here boiling, and to that I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 tablespoon of white distilled vinegar. This is gonna help form that skin around the French fries that you want, and also gonna speed up the Maillard reaction. We want crispy, crackly exterior, fluffy interior. That's gonna help with that. And then of course I season my water just a bit with salt because you want the fries to taste just as delicious on the outside as they do on the inside. You ever eat a big French fry and it's salty on the outside, but 90% of it is unsalted? That's because they didn't salt the water. Fries are gonna go into our boiling water and we're just gonna barely cook them. It's a parboil. I don't want them cooked all the way through. They should not fall apart after this. So we're gonna give these a little stir. When you do stir, they're probably gonna notice, oh, the water stopped boiling. Don't worry, just let it go. We don't need to be too worried because the water's still just hot enough to par cook them. It may come up back to a boil, it may not. Just monitor them closely. Do not cook until they're completely cooked through. We want them like 50% of the way cooked through. 1 to 3 minutes, roughly. So how do you check if they're done? You just take one out, try to find one that's average size. Pop that guy out. We're just gonna check him. How's he looking? Ow. So the outside's starting to get cooked. It's definitely floury. There's a little bit of the potato starch getting on my fingers. If I bend it and crack it, see how it didn't snap? It's like kind of raw, kind of cooked. Done. It didn't go, it just kind of gently broke. If I squeeze it with my fingers, it's not gonna turn into mashed potatoes. They're ready to remove. Drain them on a wire rack. You're gonna wanna move quickly here so they don't overcook. You're better off pulling these a little too early than pulling them too late. So think about it like that. If you're like, ooh, I don't know if they're quite there yet, maybe I should let them go longer, don't. I'm gonna shake these out just so that they're evenly dispersed. You may even wanna spread these between 2 sheets because these will continue to cook. So I am gonna get another sheet tray and just spread these out because this is gonna cause them to cook way more than I want them to. All this steam is gonna keep cooking them, okay? Let them cool completely. You can even pop them in the fridge to cool them faster. And then, once they're cool, we do need to dry them off. We're just gonna gently dab them dry. You really wanna get them as dry as you can. This is a little trick. You don't have to do this, but it does help get them crispier. So we're gonna dump these into a bowl. We're just gonna add a little bit of potato starch to that and just give them a toss. It's gonna help crisp them up, but it's also gonna help keep them separated. Shake off that excess, shake off that excess. Take your fries, gently spread amongst a clean sheet tray. Repeat with the rest of your fries, and you're gonna take that bad boy and pop it into a freezer until frozen. When you're ready to fry your fries, vegetable oil, about roughly 3 quarts in a 7-quart pot. Now the first fry is at 315 Fahrenheit. And we're just gonna lower these bad boys in carefully, frozen, in batches, not all at once. Now right now we're just forming the exterior crust. We're gonna dry them out, but we're not gonna get the full color. We're not taking them all the way yet. So as soon as the bubbling starts to subside and your fries are starting to get dried out on the exterior, then going to remove them, drain them.
Now the fries are ready for their second fry, but first,
steak. There are many ways to cook a steak, and many of them are good, honestly. I'm not gonna sit here and shit on the options, but 9 times out of 10, when I cook a steak, I don't do sous vide, I don't do reverse sear, I don't do some sort of fat bath. I've done those before and they do work well. But the tried and true method that every chef on earth has always used and always delivers is the classic pan-sear butter-based method. You've seen it before, but there are a crucial few tips you need to know. First of all, steak choice. We have a beautiful New York strip. You can see the beautiful marbling in these steaks. They have been temped to room temperature. Every restaurant I've ever worked in, every restaurant that I know that has Michelin stars, they tempt their steak because the surface temperature, being room temperature, makes a big difference in the Maillard. If it is colder and you go in with a colder steak, it will take you longer to get a Maillard. You want that Maillard as soon as possible so you can avoid overcooking the steak. Period, end of story. You can dispute me in the comments, I don't give a f. Start with a New York strip or a ribeye and make sure it is at least 1.5 to 2 inches thick. If it has a really thick fat cap, one thing I will do is I will score the fat cap, so carefully I'll get a sharp knife. And you can do it once. You go down one direction. Don't cut through the meat, just through the fat, about 1/4 inch apart each. And then you can go again the other direction to kind of create a diamond shaped pattern. And that's just gonna help render that fat. It's gonna prevent the steak from curling. This is especially important for something like a New York strip because the New York strips do love to curl. Now, always pat it dry. I want no wet steaks going in here. Make it as dry as physically possible. The beauty of a 1.5 to 2 inch thick steak is it is almost impossible to over season this. So we're gonna season it very generously with kosher salt. This is Diamond Kosher, the greatest salt on earth. And look, I want total coverage with the salt, just like that. Give it a little rub, and you'll notice a lot of that salt falls off. That is why you maximally salt. A little bit of pepper, same thing. Rub it around, flip, repeat it on the other side. Season high in the air for maximum coverage. Then you just drag that steak through all that seasoning and pick all that up. We're ready to sear. 12-inch pan, medium-high heat, high temperature oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, avocado oil. You're gonna do just enough to coat the pan, about 2 to 3 tablespoons. I don't want it drowning in the oil, but I also don't want it, barren. Little trick I like to do is take my remaining paper towels and I'll just let it sit on the paper towels because that salt is gonna draw out moisture and you do not want any of that. Moisture is your enemy. So this oil's getting pretty hot. You want it like just barely smoking. Ideally, you don't wanna take it to the smoke point, but look, it happens. If you see a little bit of smoke, put the steak in. Stainless steel is optimal for this kind of a steak. You can do cast iron, people love cast iron, but I actually prefer stainless steel. Pan's hot. We're gonna take our nice dry steak. We're going to gently lay that in away from us. Press it into the pan. You want full contact sear. It's okay to press it down for a little bit. Just try to avoid touching the actual pan because that's gonna solidify that position so it's not curling in any part of that steak. Then you'll let that sear for about 2 to 3 minutes, then we'll check the underside. Little secret, if you have a steak that's being finicky and you wanna lay it down, you could put like a tray on top, but these are fire. These are little chef's press. They're lightly weighted, pretty thick. So after like 2-3 minutes has elapsed, just be sure to check the underside. If it looks like it needs more time, give it more time, but mine does not, so I'm gonna give it a flip. We have a beautiful crispy crust. Now we're gonna let that sear for another minute or so on the other side. And then after that, one thing I like to do is bring the steak to the edge of the pan, lower the heat to medium. See that fat cap? We're then going to turn the fat cap towards the edge of the pan, tilt the pan, and crisp that fat cap up. We're also gonna help render that fat cap. This would probably be smarter to do with tongs. I'm doing it with a spoon. At this stage, we're then going to add some lightly crushed garlic to the pan, a handful of fresh thyme, and a few tablespoons of butter. Honestly, a lot of butter, probably closer to 1/4 cup. The heat is medium-high-ish. Get your butter to melt. You can put your garlic and your thyme on your steak. And once that butter's mostly melted, push the steak to the far end of the pan, turn the pan towards you, and repeatedly baste your steak with your butter over and over and over. And you're gonna do this for about 1 to 2 minutes, or just until the internal temperature registers to 135 Fahrenheit, which is medium rare. That is the only right temperature, but if you'd like it cooked more, then just keep going until it's cooked to your liking. Now, once your steak is beautifully seared, you got brown butter, it's herbaceous, it's garlicky, and it's cooked to your liking, carefully remove that. Place it to the side to rest. A lot of the time I'll take that finished garlic onto the steak nicely. Just give it a few more once-overs with your browned, flavored butter. And let that rest for 5 minutes. At this stage, what would you do? Just sit around? No, sauces. There are 2 sauces for you today. I've got a favorite of mine and then a much easier one. We're starting with the favorite, l'entrecôte sauce, inspired by Relais, which is a shop that's known for their steak and frites in Paris. I think mine's a little better. Parsley, you're gonna thinly slice that, about 1/4 cup, finely chopped. I usually like rough chiffonade it and then I'll run my knife through again. And that's how you get a real fine chop. Same exact amount, finely chopped tarragon. Make it a little flinch. That's fresh tarragon, not dried, shallot and garlic, both thinly sliced. We have 1 cup of butter. A quarter of that is gonna go into a small pan. Medium heat. Once that butter is melted and bubbling, but not brown, we're gonna add our shallot garlic in. You don't really wanna hear a sizzle because we're sweating the veg. I don't want any color on it. It's okay if you do, but ideally not. Tiny bit of salt to sweat the veg. That's gonna draw moisture out. That's gonna make it nice and sloppy wet. Get that mixed in with the butter. The heat's still around medium, medium low if needed. If it's getting cooked too fast, you can always reduce that heat. I'm gonna let that sweat about 2 to 4 minutes until the vegetables are really nice and soft. For the remaining amount of butter, that remaining 3/4 cup of butter, while that's going, just melt it. You can melt it in a microwave, you can melt it in a pot, I don't care. I'm gonna melt it in the microwave, BRB. All right, that's done, heat is off. I've got a high-powered blender right here. Now, depending on your blender, you may need to let this cool down, but I don't care. God, that smells delectable, brother. Pop our blender on, and we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of capers, 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, a nice one. Grey Poupon works, but I prefer a nicer one. Literally any other brand. 1 tablespoon of shiradashi. You can get that at an Asian market. You can also skip it. It's not a necessity, but it tastes real good. 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon white distilled vinegar, pinch of salt, 5 leaves of sage, and 7 leaves of basil, roughly, right? Give or take, it's not that big of a deal. Then we're gonna add 1 fresh egg yolk. You're gonna add 6 anchovy fillets. Now remember those chopped herbs earlier. You're gonna add 2/3 of each of those. Just leave a third behind. We're gonna stir that into the sauce later. Got my melted butter here. Have it to the side. We're gonna blend this on high speed until as smooth as possible. Very simply, as this is blending, you're gonna reduce to a medium speed, and then you're gonna slowly stream in this butter. You may not use all of it. You may only use half. Use your eyes. All right, that's actually roughly where I want it. So I left about 1/4 of the butter behind. You could use all of it. It won't hurt the sauce. I'm looking for a specific color, and I'm looking for more of like a medium light green. It's nice and thick. We're gonna stir in the remaining herbs, and I also wanna add about 1 tablespoon of very thinly sliced chives. The thinner you can go, the better. This is like every chef's favorite flex. It's a great way to tell how sharp your knife is, but it also is a great way to see someone's technical skills and attention to detail. So that's gonna go in. You see f***ed up chives on a line station, dude, you're f***ed. I've been yelled at so many times, it's crazy. Rightfully so. So stir that in. Look at this, dude. Now, always taste it first. Make sure it's where you want it. Oh, it tastes great. You can add a little extra salt or white distilled vinegar to taste if needed. If you want it a little brighter, a little saltier, I'm happy with this.
Now, let's move on to our easier sauce.
Now for the au poivre sauce, shallot, 1. This is much simpler, okay? Just take the shallot, cut the top off, cut the bottom off, cut it in half. Little 1/4-inch batons, and then once down the middle. Yeah, look, little dice. I also like a little garlic in my au poivre. The garlic, on the other hand, I want more subtle. And to coax more subtle flavors out, instead of dicing it or finely chopping it, you're just going to thinly slice it. So pan, medium heat, 2.5 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Once that's melted and bubbling, you're gonna add rough cracked black peppercorns to toast. In order to rough crack those, you're gonna take a pan or a mortar and pestle and just get them roughly cracked. I don't want tiny little particles, I want big chunks. All right, toast that in the pan, medium heat for about 25 seconds, just until very, very fragrant. Then you're gonna add your shallot garlic. Just a touch of salt, just get that sweating, and saute. Reduce the heat to medium low. We're gonna let that cook just until softened. 2 minutes. That smells so good. What is that? Starter pack right here, dude. Shallot, garlic, butter, peppercorn. Once you get there, you're gonna crank that up to medium high. Be careful, because this might flame up. Brandy, 1/4 cup. That will ignite if I shake this pan. Should I ignite it? All right, fuck it. See, that's what happens. It'll stop. Now, once that's pretty much 80–90% reduced, also called au sec, we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of beef stock, a nice one. Bring that to a boil, reduce that by half. About 1 to 2 minutes. It'll happen quick, especially if it's in a wide pan. The less surface area in your pan, the slower it will reduce. The more surface area, the faster it will reduce. All right, at that stage, you're then going to add a 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Whoa. I'm not even gonna do another take. That was crazy. Stir that in, and then we're gonna let that reduce just until slightly thickened, like 30 seconds to a minute. Oh yeah, see that? You might as well consider that pretty nappe, dude. Now, you could stop here and season it, but I do like to add a couple of tablespoons of cold butter, swirl that in until it's melted and emulsified. That's just gonna make it a little extra glossy, a little extra rich, a little like cling to the steak, you know? Now taste. Here's what I'm gonna add. A little salt to taste. Always taste and season before you serve. I'm also gonna add about 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Optional, but it'll just add a little extra flavor. And our au poivre is done.
Now it's time to go back to our fries for their second and final fry. This is the crisping moment.
Now, once you're at 350, you have to be very careful here. This is an important moment. They will get too dark. We don't want them too dark. This will probably happen faster depending on elevation, blah, 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 so many things. So dunk them in and go just until they're crispy and the bubbling has subsided and as little color has been added, basically. I'm gonna drain them slightly into a bowl. Kosher salt. You always wanna salt these while they're still hot. I salt them in a bowl while tossing constantly, just so that they get even coverage.
And that is our first method of making delicious frites. A nice golden bronze, crunchy and delightful.
Now let's talk about method 2. Uh-oh. Listen, I've tested a ton of French fry methods, and the method I just showed you is great. It would be better if you froze the fries a second time before the final fry, but that's just a whole nother step. I mean, it's like 2 days of waiting for French fries. If you don't have time and you want really surprisingly good fries, find any brand of frozen fries in the frozen food section, and instead of baking them, just deep fry them. That is it. 325, 350 Fahrenheit, vegetable oil, 3 quarts in a 7-quart pot, and you literally just fry them directly from frozen. Now, once those are golden brown, crispy and hot through, which really only takes like maybe 2 minutes, you're going to spider them out, drain out the excess oil, and then immediately drain them. Most of these fries are already seasoned. You don't really need any extra salt. So I would taste one first before seasoning them. But look at this, dude. This is crazy. I mean, like, it works so well, and they don't brown too much. They got that nice snap. They've got that fluffy interior. Listen, that is so hot, but it is delicious. So to plate this, you're gonna need a nice big plate. You're gonna load that plate up with fries. Be generous, you know, I want it like 2 times the amount of fries a normal person would eat because we're not normal people. Pile them up, but leave a little slot, maybe a third of that plate for your steak. Speaking of, once your steak is rested, you will take that beautiful, luscious piece of meat and you're gonna slice it thinly, slightly less than a 1/4 inch. Fan it out beautifully so you can see that nice medium rare. Lay it onto your plate, and then you're going to sauce your steak down one side on the direction of the fries, so it covers half your steak, a little bit of your fries. Here I'm using l'entrecôte sauce, but obviously you could use the au poivre if you wish. Both are absolutely delicious. It's up to you. Hit that with a little bit of flaky salt on top, thinly sliced chives, and serve immediately. This is a steak at Frites. Just a steak by itself would be lovely, but this sauce takes it overboard. First of all, the beef is juicy, it's tender, ultra fatty and luxurious. Like entrecôte sauce you would think would be too rich, but it's just perfectly balanced. It's a little acidic, tiny bit of sweetness, and so herbaceous and fragrant and refreshing and yet creamy and yet salty, and it's everything you want. And you take your little French fry, you dip that in that. You don't even need ketchup, although I would eat this with ketchup also, if I'm being honest. This is like, to me, one of the greatest meals on earth, and that is exactly why we're starting this channel off right. One of the most comforting meals of all time, steak frites. Anyone can make this, and if you do the frozen French fries, I'm not gonna judge you. It's totally fine, and everyone's gonna think you're the greatest cook on planet Earth. The link for this recipe is in the description. There are a lot of recipes coming, so if you wanna see them, please subscribe. I appreciate you watching. We love you. See ya.